Alphabetic handwriting was invented in the 35th century BC, whereas the typewriter was only invented and developed in the last quarter of the 19th century. One might ask, since we now have computers, why should we examine the implications of the move from handwriting to typewriting? Just as a study of orality is critical to being able to recognize the features of literary culture, an examination of handwriting is essential to understanding the implications of typewriting and beyond. It is vital that we investigate how both forms of writing may shape our consciousness in the very act of writing. Taking a phenomenological approach to the topic helps us to identify the pen as a tool and writing as a communication technology. Writing machine was the name originally suggested for the new writing technology, but it was rejected as inappropriate on the grounds that the words would be in printed letters. This shows that the inventors saw the typewriting as something markedly different, and that they wanted others to see it that way too. That is, they wanted the typewriter to be seen as a competitor to handwriting. However, some features of handwriting were integrated in a bid for increased popularity. For example, the original typewriter only allowed for typing in uppercase letters. A modified version was released in 1878 that offered both upper and lowercase letters. In the late 19th century, businesses were becoming much more complex organizations, with the implication that there were significant increases in paperwork and the need for record keeping. The typewriter provided businesses with a faster method for recording information. Indeed, no pen wielded by the human hand can compete in speed with an ordinary typewriter. Other perceived advantages of the typewriter were legibility and making copies. But how did the typewriter modify the look and feel of writing? Typed writing is uniform in appearance. Each time the same letter is typed, it looks identical. Each line is separated by the same exact spacing as the one before it. This formal and precise appearance made typed text more suitable for business and official communications. It has been claimed that this uniformity causes the writing to be depersonalized. Typed writing conceals the handwriting and thereby the character. The typewriter makes everyone look the same. In contrast, handwriting is unique. There is variation not just between authors, but even within the writing of one author, and that each letter is formed slightly differently, and the script has varied spacing, etc. This depersonalization of the text led to the conclusion that typed text was not inherently suitable for personal communications. The physical process of writing is different for handwritten and typewritten text. Only the pen sits between the writer and the paper when handwriting, whereas the typewriter occupies the space between the writer and the text when typing. Some felt that the typewriter created more distance between the writer and the text, both literally and in the sense that a machine was intervening. This view may have been influenced by the fact that the pen had become to be seen as an extension of the hand. Like writing itself, it had been interiorized and accepted as part of the human body. This view continues in the computer age. I suspect that this illustrates the emotional attachment many feel towards an older medium during any phase of remediation. Orwell explains that such notions also serve to obscure the status of handwriting as a technology. However, the notion that the typewriter created distance warrants further investigation, as it certainly suggests that there was a transformation of experience. McLuhan claims that this sense of distance resulted in the writer being less closely attached to what they were writing, whereas handwriting remains part of you. This assertion is supported by writers who lamented this apparent loss of physical proximity to the writing. As Chandler observes, some writers claimed that the closeness of the hand to the paper was associated with a sense of intimacy with the text, which was lost when using a typewriter. This sense of depersonalization is also acknowledged by Heim. A related argument is that the act of typing results in less authentic writing, because the word no longer passes through the hand as it writes and acts authentically. Orwell argues that this notion of handwriting as authentic was born out of the typewriter. The typewriter affixed authenticity fully to the writing hand by creating a contrast, by making it much easier for mass numbers of people to produce printed text and thus for handwriting to be distinguished from typed texts. The sense of depersonalization and lack of authenticity associated with typed writing was exacerbated by the fact that typed text could easily be forged, and that business communications often omitted handwritten signatures. Furthermore, in business practice, the typewriter was often used to simply record text rather than author original work. Given that the typewriter eventually replaced handwriting for business communications during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, it follows that the typewriter was more often used for copying and recording than original thought. Despite the success of the typewriter in the business arena, it never seriously threatened to replace handwriting. Writing in 1963, Hildreth notes, "In spite of typewriters and telephones, writing continues to serve for convenient communication and record making." The space created by each writing technology permits certain kinds of thinking and discourages others. How is the connection between thought and the physical act of writing affected by the medium used? Chandler observes that many writers have alluded to the importance of handwriting in their thinking and writing, some going as far as to claim some kind of mystic connection between the brain and the actual act of writing in longhand. Some recent empirical studies seem to lend some support to the idea that there is a stronger connection between handwriting and processing in the brain. Muller and Oppenheimer claim that their study shows that the pen is mightier than the keyboard. Sainer is a proponent of the view that the motion of handwriting has an effect on the thought itself. He connects this with the operation of the hand movement, stating that this is critical to the thought. But doesn't the typewriter also involve hand movements? Sainer admits that the hand-inspired thought phenomenon is still engaged with a keyboard. I'm familiar with how this has changed the way I think, but I am still thinking. If the typewriter changed the way people thought, in what ways did it do so? It is possible that the precise and uniform nature of typewriting may encourage a precise and ordered way of thinking. It is also possible that the perceived distance it created also resulted in cognitive distance. Unfortunately, there is not enough empirical evidence to draw conclusions. In an effort to try to understand how the way we write may change the way we think, I asked my classmates whether they think differently when typing as opposed to handwriting. After all, the QWERTY typewriter keyboard is still the dominant model for computers today. I got mixed responses. Here are a few interesting extracts. I could get my thoughts down on paper with a much better flow than I did on my computer. Over time, though, I have adapted to the on-screen world like most other people. I still sometimes write by hand and do find that I can put my thoughts down very freely, but I can now also put my thoughts down on screen with just as much ease. I feel I think better when writing by hand. I guess I use my laptop to brainstorm and pen and paper to form the thinking and bonding that I want to occur. I like planning and note-taking on paper, though once I tried to put those thoughts into paragraphs, I much prefer the freedom on the computer. The ability to cut and paste and just let my thoughts flow from my head onto paper and then organize as needed feels very freeing to me. I am a typer. Come to think of it, I rarely handwrite anything anymore. Whilst I can't draw any real conclusions based on this anecdotal evidence, it does seem that individuals have developed different ways of thinking when writing is mediated by different tools. It is difficult to identify and separate the effects of technology from the historical, social, and political contexts that they inhabit. As explained by Sassoon, collectively the handwriting of a population of any period is a reflection of educational thinking, but overall it is influenced and ultimately moulded by economic need, social habits, and contemporary taste. The typewriter was slow to gain acceptance, which according to Monaco was because it required a shift in popular thought. As hard as it is to conceive of today, Americans were deeply uncomfortable with the whole notion of mechanical writing, and it would take them a while to get used to it. Monaco gives a good example of how the act of sending a typed letter was taken as a personal affront, the recipient replying, The eventual success of the typewriter suggests that these societal hurdles were overcome. In conclusion, the typewriter may have changed the way writers think. At the very least, it seems to have led many writers to realize the personal connection they had to their work when they used handwriting. How did society view the typewriter? The industrialization and rapid mechanization in the Victorian age served to intensify dichotomous views of technology, seeing machines as dehumanizing on the one hand and technology as driving the development of its social structure on the other. Similarly, the typewriter was viewed in dichotomous terms. There were those who argued that the typewriter dehumanized the act of writing by distancing the writing from his writing and possibly his thoughts. They rejected the new technology. Others advocated for the typewriter, claiming that the pen would become obsolete and that the typewriter was destined in time to create a revolution in the conduct of affairs in all parts of the civilized world. As is usually the case, neither extreme seems to have prevailed. Thank you for watching.